член Нью-Йоркської колегії адвокатів, за версією Нью-Йорк Magazine визнаний новим активістом року і входить в когорту людей, які змінюють світ. Ронан Ферроу відповідає за впровадження і розширення молодіжної політики, розробку відповідних програм Державного департаменту США, діяльність якого спрямована на підтримку молоді, її економічній і громадській активності, заохочує урядові структури відповідати на проблеми молоді засобами дипломатії і безпосередньо працює з молодими людьми по всьому світу. Його послужний список просто вражає. Отже, сьогодні в нас є чудова можливість послухати та поспілкуватися із Ронаном Ферроу. І я з великим задоволенням хочу надати йому слово.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Larissa and Ronana and the rest of the National Economics University staff, and thank you to all of the students here today who took the time to come out. I know how busy you are, and I know how industrious you are about building solutions that are going to spur economic growth for Kyiv, for the country, and for the region. I know that because I've had some conversations with some teachers here, and also with some leaders in the student body, and I'm looking forward to carrying forward that conversation and hearing from you what we can learn in the United States from you, how we can best stand by you as you're building solutions and pursuing opportunities as you finish your studies here, and how we can make sure that all around this country we are harnessing the tremendous potential that I already see in young Ukrainians. I think that potential is going to be at the heart of solving all of our challenges in this region and globally. And that is exactly why Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, my boss, announced recently this new global focus on youth that you just heard about. I run our new Office of Global Youth Issues, and I'm responsible for implementing that policy. And it really responds to two fundamental needs that we've heard a call to action on from young people all around the world. There are two needs that I think we all can understand as young people. A need to make a living and support oneself and one's family, really what you're all pursuing here, studying economics. And also a need for dignity, to be able to make one's voice heard and meaningfully shape the future of our communities and countries. Those are aspirations that are fueling positive change all around the world. We've seen young people as innovators and small business owners and founders that drive economic recovery in places where it's desperately needed. We've seen young people stand up as defenders of good governance and democracy. And I think one of the things that Americans think of when they think of this part of the world is how all of your parents' generation did stand up and oppose oppression and ensure that democracy and transparency prevailed. That is a lesson that we're now seeing playing out all around regions like the Middle East and North Africa, where young people have also stood strong for democracy, and where we're seeing a transformative effect that the potential I just described can have on political realities. But of course, that potential also has tremendous risks. It means that young people can often, when they don't have opportunities to make themselves heard, when they don't have sources of legitimate livelihood, be a source of instability. They can be ripe targets for recruitment by criminal and extremist elements. And in other parts of the world, like right here in Ukraine, they can leave in droves. When we most need all of your creative energy and solutions, the lack of opportunities can sometimes drive people away. The problems in Ukraine, therefore, have resonance all around the world for our generation. But there are some particular ways that they manifest, where I think that all of your skills that you have coming out of this extraordinary university will be instrumental in building solutions. Obviously, all of you face the very high youth unemployment rate here in Ukraine, where 15% of working-age young people are out of work. That's something that resonates for me as an American too, where we are grappling with high youth unemployment rates. It's something that resonates across Europe, where in Spain and Greece, young people have taken to the streets to protest a lack of economic opportunity. So this is as pressing a challenge challenge as we all face. Because if we want to see a brighter economic future for the region and for the world, it's going to require economic entrepreneurship and more employed young people in our generation to build the backbone of that recovery. Second, you all confront, I think, a frustration with the ability to do business in this country transparently. I had some great discussions earlier with groups of young Ukrainians who really pointed to corruption and a lack of openness as being at the heart of many of the challenges that they face. And I've heard some incredibly creative ideas for how young people want to tackle that problem. That's going to be the kind of creative thinking that we need in this country and I think in general. And particularly in Ukraine, with the educational opportunities you all have, and particularly in this elite group with the opportunities you have, I think that I will leave this country with a strong sense of optimism for your ability to go forward and solve some of these challenges. So I think that in both of these areas, the political participation and championing good governance and in building economic solutions, you all have a role to play. You all will be the change going forward. And we've already seen stories across this country that really exemplify that. Just in my trip now, having talked to a small group of young Ukrainians, I've seen that on full display. I'm inspired by stories like a young man named Vladimir, who was from Lugansk and saw a lack of transparency in access to information about zoning and property rights, and went out and built an NGO with some support from the United States government, I'm proud to say, that provides more access to that information. So that's the kind of entrepreneurial solution building that we want to see more, we want to replicate. So what are we doing, United States government and world powers around the world, to do that? We posed ourselves that question, and I'm excited to say that I think we're doing a lot. The solutions ultimately need to come from within Ukraine. They need to come from all of you, which is why mostly what I want to do is hear from you. But I do think that the United States can play a role as an honest partner on this, as a force for good that can provide some tools that you can use as you do design your own solutions. One of the things we're putting into place to that end is a council of local youth advisors at our embassy here. That group convened for the first time this morning. We have one of its members here in the audience, actually, and had a very productive discussion, where first we asked them, what are your policy guidance to us? What do you think we maybe are doing right, but also could be doing differently, could be doing better? And we identified several concrete areas of action. Then we turned to the young people from Ukraine for solutions. We said, look, we don't have all the answers. What are your ideas for initiatives? And I will be very excited to watch some of the innovative ideas that I've heard in that discussion come to fruition over the coming months. To that end, that council will have a new fund that I'm proud to be announcing, designed to support some of those innovative project ideas. That's just a small part of the solution, though. We're also launching targeted interventions, like a new financial literacy training program that we just announced in the last few weeks, which we created as a result of hearing that 50% of young Ukrainians don't have basic financial literacy skills, and that was an obstacle to young people going out and creating businesses and being prosperous. We also are, I'm excited to say, launching a new incubator for science and technology projects at Kyiv Polytechnic. This is a model that we've seen success in the United States, where many of our great universities, like Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which you may have heard of, have similar incubators. And that will allow young innovators in the science and technology field here in Ukraine to go and seek resources and training to develop their projects and ideas. These are all important tools that we hope we can bring to the table. But as I said, solutions will come from you. And I want to make sure that we are continuing to up the ante and partner with all of you. So with that, I'd like to turn the floor over to all of you and take some questions, and leave you with the affirmation that the United States government stands by you as you seek to participate and stay involved. Because the one thing that will stagnate Ukraine, that will prevent us from addressing these shared challenges, is a lack of involvement. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you please indicate your readiness to ask this question? And, well, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Fero. First of all, please let me thank you for your speech that was full of enthusiasm, inspiration, and leadership. But let me ask one simple question to you, and that is, from your point of view, what is more important to tackle inequality among the members of the society and to preserve human rights and beings? Is it more important to have a highly established judicial system or to promote local traditions, customs, or maybe some aspects of religion? Or maybe it's some kind of a mix?
I think that you're exactly right, that it is a kind of a mix. There is absolutely a role for local traditions and sort of ad hoc solutions on a community basis, but none of that can replace strong rule of law and governance that ensures accountability and that says to the international community that there is transparency and fairness in the system. One of the reasons why I think we see a lack of foreign investment in Ukraine is because there is some sense that there's a lack of that level of transparency. So we do need the organized rule of law if we want to see more economic growth, more investment.
Thank you.
Well, some more questions?
My name is Stanislav, I'm a second-year student, and as I finish the university in 2 years, I'm really concerned with unemployment rate in Ukraine, and I would like to hear what are your own initiatives and what were they with dealing with the level of unemployment in the US particularly, because I know that a lot of educated people have problems with going to some big company and well, having just some time to look what it is like to work there.
Yes.
Please.
I think you actually hit on part of the solution. There needs to be a culture of internship where young people can start to experience what the private sector is like early while you're in school. So that's something that actually came up in our discussion with our council of young people. And we met with an initial group, but I want to say that is a much larger dialogue where we're tapping all of your good ideas, where the members of that group will be going out into their communities and hearing more, and where we hope some of you may one day come to join that group and we can directly work with you on building solutions. But one of the solutions that was proposed was trying to encourage more businesses and private sector actors to offer those kinds of internships. So I think getting an early start is one answer. I would also say having the expectation that one will have to go out and build one's own solutions, that entrepreneurship is going to be a part of the answer in cases where there aren't existing jobs at established institutions. So to that end, young people should really look to the private sector, not just to the government, for mentorship, for resources, for training. I think that there are a lot of business leaders that can offer a lot of guidance as young people try to strike out and build their own initiatives. And that takes courage, but it is going to be necessary. In many parts of the world, we're in fact seeing that a majority of new jobs are created by those startups rather than by established businesses.
Yeah. Can I have please one more question?
Yeah, please.
If, for example, the government creates some kind of organization for big businesses to have some one center, I mean like incubator, like the one in the Polytech University in Kyiv, as you said, but for economical purposes, I mean not only high-tech investments and businesses, because they are all over the world widespread. It is easy to establish your business in the internet, I mean relatively easy. And what if we do some kind of organization for the big companies to join and propose something for young people?
Yeah, that is in fact exactly what we're trying to do on a global level. One of the initiatives that Secretary Clinton recently announced as a part of this new push on global youth issues is a partnership of businesses that we're calling our Global Youth Jobs Alliance, which is many of the big multinational corporations coming together to share best practices on mentoring and hiring youth, to devise new ways to bring existing job opportunities to young people. And my hope is that that can filter down to a local level where those companies that have subsidiaries here in Ukraine, for instance, can be more engaged on these issues. That said, I think that the solutions really can start at a grassroots level and work their way up too. I think that all of you, as you go forward and become leaders in the business community, which I hope that you'll do right here in Ukraine, whatever opportunities you might also pursue elsewhere, I think that you can play a role in making sure that businesses reach out to young people.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, some more questions, please.
I love that this group has been so involved so fast. I was told, maybe it'll take a while for people to warm up. No, you're giving me tough questions right away. There's no getting off the hook in this room.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ferrow. I have a question about NGOs. There are plenty of NGOs in Europe which exist to support and to get young people and students particularly involved in political and economic life. So one of these NGOs, for example, is European Youth Parliament. Nevertheless, it's quite important to get involved, for the students to get involved in political and economic life.
Yes.
This NGO in Ukraine is fully supported. So I'm wondering if whether there are such NGOs in the United States, in which ways are they supported by the government, and maybe how we can implement your experience of supporting such NGOs in Ukraine.
Yes. It's about NGOs specifically that are doing this work. Well, we do have an environment in the United States where it's very easy to go out and create NGOs and where we really encourage dissent in the political system and the formation of political groups, including a lot of youth-led groups that allow people to make their voices heard in an organized way. So that's something that I really do think is effective all around the world. In places where you have a strong civil society, that is often one of the catalysts for a robust economy too, because you have scaffolding that can support good governance, which in turn fosters investment. So I think that making sure there's a free and open culture where those NGOs can be created in the first place is a big part of the solution. And actually, I just heard that today new legislation was passed that might remove some of the barriers to the creation of new NGOs. So I think that's something that we certainly encourage seeing more of.
Ladies and gentlemen, some more questions? Yes, please.
Just one question. Well, judging by your experience and by recent events in the Middle East and in Africa, do you think there will be a flood of highly educated people, young people, that stood for freedom and democracy in their countries? Will they immigrate to the US and Europe? And do you consider this as a global issue?
I think it is absolutely a global issue. I think that the outcome of those revolutions that you mentioned is still very much in question, because we have seen young people stand up in the moment of protest and make their voices heard, which takes courage and which is important. But we still need to see those young people be invested in building lasting institutions, support democracy and civil society in an ongoing way, which requires much more organization and much more of a coherent approach to political involvement. So that's something that the US is trying to encourage and that we're obviously watching closely and with great hope. But whether you see an empowered, educated generation that contributes to good governance, and I think indeed, as you say, that would have a global effect, or whether we see young people failing, as has so often been the case historically, to keep the momentum, allowing the victors of a revolution to become the new generation of oppressors. That is still an open question.
Thank you very much.
Yes, please.
name is Oksana. I'm a student in the Faculty of International Economy. I have two questions. The first one is, there are a lot of organizations, a lot of companies that provide internship for students, but they don't give the guarantee of employment in the entity. But that's not the main problem. The main problem is that during that internship, they use young people as free workforce to do paperwork. Should we create a model of evaluating those organizations providing internships so the organization will be motivated to give the knowledge, not to teach us how to scan, how to Xerox, and so on?
Absolutely the case. This is a controversy that we face in the United States, where there aren't a lot of job opportunities. Young people often are forced for years to work in internships, and sometimes it's unpaid. And we do have legal regulations that try to prevent the abuse of unpaid interns for labor. But it is not a perfect system, and I think there is too much of that that goes on. So this is an area where the United States is not claiming to be perfect either. I think that organizations in the business world really teaming up to develop best practices and to set standards for how interns are treated is very important as a part of that solution.
I think that we should punish those organizations who ignore teaching us, like they should pay more taxes or something like that. And my other question would be, also in Ukraine we have a problem of putting one's own people into the offices.
Yes.
So people get their jobs not because of their skills and knowledge, but because of their personal connections.
Yes.
How do you handle that in the US?
That is one of the most significant challenges to economic growth. Let's take a show of hands. How many of you think that your education and skills matter more than your connections and money? That's good. Now, how many of you think that the country will actually keep the same? That you'll be able to get opportunities based on your work rather than your connections? Okay, I think that lays out exactly the stakes of the problem. There was actually a poll that was done on this, and it was very similar to the show of hands we had. 60% of young Ukrainians said that they think that the opportunities they get will be because of their connections and money, rather than because of anything that they can accomplish themselves. And that is a recipe for stagnation and a lack of economic progress. So the answer is, I think that we are not perfect on that score in the United States. Of course, connections still matter, and of course, there is not the amount of upward mobility that we would like to see. But I do think a big part of the so-called American dream is that there is at least a firm commitment to the ideal that people can get a start anyway and rise to the top. And I think we have a lot of examples of that in our government. We have a lot of examples of that in the business world, where people come from nothing and get good on the promise of their own self-worth. So I do actually think that America can teach some lessons to the world in that respect. Thank you.
I would like to ask you, what would you advise to young people who have fresh ideas, but in our country, most of them are afraid of being stolen. They're afraid that the idea will be stolen, and there is no law that protect them, and they really can't hope that their idea won't be okay. They think that somebody else that will have money, they will bring this idea to them.
It's a very good question, and it's very specific, which I like. I've been very impressed by the conversations I've had with young Ukrainians, how they target specific problems and then suggest specific solutions, which is exactly what we need if we want to confront these challenges. What you're talking about is something that the United States grapples with that is a global problem. Intellectual property regulations and law are very, very important to making sure that the young innovator, the young entrepreneur, can actually make good on their ideas and profit from them without them being stolen. So, the United States does stand strong for international regulations on intellectual property on the internet and other new media formats. But ultimately, if you have a vibrant economic environment, a vibrant environment of entrepreneurship where new ideas can flourish, and a culture of foreign investment where there are incentives to stay in this country and job opportunities that can sustain staying in this country, that's how you solve the problem of brain drain. Now, a lot of those problems are only solved through large-scale macroeconomic solutions. They require transparency. They require combating corruption aggressively to make sure that businesses know that they can work in a free and prosperous Ukraine and will not be subject to an unfair judicial system, for instance. Those are all very important priorities and big problems that are going to take time to continue to address. But we want to make sure we stand by all of you as you build grassroots support for those solutions.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, can you please tell us how do you plan on implementing the ideas of fairness and transparency in Ukraine with the current political and social system that the Ukrainian government is implementing now?
I think it really is going to fall to all of you. I think robust participation in the next election is going to be important. You can all make your voices heard, and that is critical. I think that some of the ideas that I've heard already in my conversations here, for instance, for founding more NGOs that encourage transparency and serve as watchdog groups, founding grassroots networks of maybe students like yourselves that commit themselves to transparency and try to lobby government officials to that same goal. Those are all mechanisms that are going to help in this. And there are no easy solutions, but I really do believe what I mentioned earlier, that strong civil society voices, and particularly youth voices, voices of students like all of us, can make all the difference in shaping some of those big political challenges. So I think that that's where the answers are going to lie on transparency issues.
And one more question. What has been your most complicated and interesting task during your career that you had to deal with, all connected with global youth issues?
That is a really good question. I've never thought of. There have been some doozies. I would say I spent several years working on issues in Afghanistan and Pakistan, which is a very difficult setting to work because there is so much conflict and instability, because there are very few channels for young people to make their voices heard and for civil society in general to flourish and function in a free and open way. And confronting those issues that we're talking about today is equally important in a place like that, but significantly more difficult because people are also dying every day in combat. So that would be probably the most challenging setting I've had to work in, and the most frustrating because I had such limited access and such limited ability to confront the larger issues that drove that conflict.
Did you gain any success while staying there and while trying to implement some ideas?
I think so. I mean, this gets to broader questions of the United States' involvement in the region. I think that we made some strides. I think, for instance, there are more girls going to school in Afghanistan than there ever have been historically. There are more women involved in the political process. Not enough on either of those things, but it's a start. And that is a start that I hope can be continued as international forces draw down on that part of the world. But there too, I think it returns to the point that a new generation of leaders is going to be needed to cut through some of the old problems that drive these sustained conflicts. And I do sense a lot of entrepreneurship and optimism from young Afghans and Pakistanis in that particular region. And my hope is that they can harness new solutions.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Mr. Furrow. My name is Olivia. Wilkie Hoffman. I have two questions. The first one is the situation in Ukraine nowadays is it shows that we have so many lawyers, so many economists, and the job market lacks people that have skills since Ukraine is not a so developed country, it needs more people that build, construct, make some more scientific innovations. How would you recommend that we could deal with that we have so many, like I said, economic professions and law and so on and so forth?
Yeah. This is a challenge that I've seen around the world. Often, our generation is raised with the expectation that we'll fit into certain careers. We'll be doctors, lawyers, engineers. Those are wonderful things, and there's a place for it. And I myself trained as a lawyer, so I'm part of that dynamic. But on the other hand, all around the world in today's global economy, you're not seeing the jobs in those sectors that maybe you sometimes are seeing in some of the more skill-based areas you talked about. That's why all around the world, the United States is supporting skill-based and vocational training, which very often is a way to more direct employment than some of those traditional careers. And I've seen great success in that all around the world, including in the United States. I have a brother who trained at a vocational school as a car mechanic, and now he makes a good living as a car mechanic and really enjoys that. And that turned out to be a much more practical career path for him. So I think that it does fall to our generation to be open-minded. There's no one solution for everyone, and young Ukrainians absolutely should consider pursuing some of those more skill-based careers you talked about.
And I have one more question.
Yeah.
It is about, since we all know that the world is in some kind of economic crisis.
Yeah.
So you mentioned many programs that you funded by the U.S. government. So I wonder if this crisis will influence the financial support of this program. You mentioned these incubators and so on and so far. Will you keep the same amount of those programs? Will you expand or will you limit it?
Yeah. It's a really good question, and one that we are wrestling with right now. The reality is the economic downturn has hit America as well. And resources are very limited right now, and that is something we're feeling in our foreign assistance budget. And that is a conversation that is ongoing every day with our leaders in Congress in the United States and our State Department that champions some of these programs around the world. It's a difficult conversation. The answer varies depending on the individual budget, but there are many areas of America's foreign aid that have taken significant cuts. Now, at the same time, we have committed to standing strong for these areas of democracy building, economic empowerment that I talked about. And we will continue to do so even in the face of cuts that affect our own spending at home. But it is a delicate balance, and we do this not because it's the right thing or it's charitable, but because we really feel that it is strategically important for all of our shared goals to build a more stable, prosperous future. And that America will benefit from that spending directly. So the answer is both, yes, we face that risk, and yes, also we're continuing to try to stand strong for these things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, please.
My name is Mark. I'm a graduate student, faculty in international economy. Well, the sport changes very rapidly, and what features of character should young people have to reach success in business, economics, politics, and so on?
I think it's all the qualities that you already show in being leaders in the student community. I think it's a certain fearlessness. I think it is tenacity. Part of the culture of entrepreneurship is, I think, an acceptance of the risk of failure. Many of the great success stories of some of the brands that have come out of America that now dominate the international market were attempts number 2 or 3 or 4, where the creators tried and failed, and then it was also and tried again. So those are all things that we need to encourage if we want to see new initiatives that take off. At the same time, I think it's also relevant where you adopt those qualities. Are you learning to be tenacious internationally, and maybe in ways that don't then pay back to the community here in Ukraine? Or are you, sticking around here and investing in building solutions for this country? And that's a very personal question that each of you has to answer. But it's very much my hope that as you go forward and use the incredible skills you're getting in this school, you will continue to build solutions right here in Ukraine, wherever else you might go, as I said.
Thank you very much. Mr. Farrow, please, can you tell us about what role do student organizations play in the United States, and how can the U.S. government support Ukrainian student organizations? How can it influence their development?
Well, to the first question, I think actually the United States could probably learn from some of the precedents and best practices in European countries, in this part of the world, and indeed some of the things I've seen right here in Ukraine, in terms of having a more organized culture of youth organizations, youth political groups. We don't have a substantial culture of youth wings of our mainstream political parties, and when we do, they often don't have enough of a mainstream voice. So this is something we wrestle with ourselves. That said, there are student leaders and civil society groups that are led by young people all around America that are doing very good and important community work. And I make sure that as we're building up our international engagement with youth, we're also consulting with them and getting them a seat at the table so that we can learn from their accomplishments. To your second question about what we can do to support Ukrainian youth as you all try to organize and make your voices heard, those are the platforms that I just mentioned. That incubator for entrepreneurship at Kyiv Polytechnic, that youth council where we're directly trying to take ideas from young Ukrainians and help make them a reality, and the funding for new and innovative ideas that I mentioned that will accompany that. These are baby steps, but they're steps in the right direction.
Thank you.
My name is Julia. I'm from junior year right now. And first of all, I'd like to explain my only answer in the auditorium. I guess I'm the only optimist in here. And I'm the only one who really faced this situation when your skills were more important than any kind of connections. So here comes my question. So when young professionals are involved in some global activities and global projects, do they use their really nationalism? Do they become cosmopolitans while doing this?
Do they become more cosmopolitan?
Yeah. Do they lose their
roots? I think that is always a risk. And that is one of the problems that underlies the brain drain dilemma that we've been discussing. As one gets successful and gets more opportunities, it gets easier to go away and not come back. And that's why I admire so much the young people here in Ukraine and elsewhere in the world that have worked, that do feel passionately that whatever tools they get elsewhere, and many of those tools I think come to the United States. We have over 40,000 exchange programs and opportunities that I would urge you to capitalize on if you have any interest in spending time in the United States, either in the short term or studying more. But our hope is that we can use those programs to empower people like you to then come back into your communities and stay true to your roots and your country in the way that you describe. Again, not because it's a charitable thing, but because the United States wants to and needs to see a stable and prosperous future for this part of the world, for our own sakes. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, it was the last question. The last question, and what shall we do? Okay.
Take one final question.
Good morning, my name is Eric. I'm a young student. So I'm very interested in the topic of the role of women in business. And so my question is there real discrimination in business in Ukraine, and what should we do to become successful in future?
Yes. Well, I'd be interested, as we have a conversation after this on the way out, tap into that. So that's why the United States has made empowering women such a priority. I mentioned that we have this Global Youth Issues Office, but we also have a Global Women's Issues Office and a strong policy on empowering women everywhere that we do business. So that is important. It requires commitment of that type from governments, not just the United States, but all governments. But it also requires commitment from the business community. And all of you, as the next generation of business leaders, can play a role in building that culture of acceptance for women and of encouraging women to be business leaders. One of the things that I've been most inspired by is that I work for an array of incredibly strong women leaders who also are mothers, who also went out and had families and didn't let it hold them back from being some of the most powerful women in the world. Secretary Clinton is an incredible, obviously, example of that. So my hope is that you would also look to similar role models in your communities here in Ukraine and really make sure that that is a part of the solutions that we talked about. We work on a variety of programs that directly empower women. We actually just launched in the Middle East and North Africa a program called Tech Girls, which is specifically for young women and teenage girls, and links them up with professionals in the United States for mentorship and training in the technology sector so that we can see more leaders in that important area of economic growth in that part of the world. But we need to see more of that activity everywhere. All right.
Well, it was the last question, and one word from our students at Kneu.
It was a great experience and very useful ideas, and we hope to see you again in National University.
We also believe that after this meeting, we could establish a win-win cooperation and collaborative effort between you and our university.
I love that idea, and I want to say, aside from any specific partnerships with us, I hope that all of you on your own also go forward and build new grassroots solutions. Because just the types of questions that I'm getting, which I don't get everywhere. Young people everywhere don't always have the wherewithal to be that specific about the challenges and that thoughtful about the answers. So my hope is that you'll all go forward and be those powerful business leaders we need that champion these good ideals and build new solutions in every aspect of life here in Ukraine. And I would love to partner with you on that whenever we're doing.
Нет, мы же сфотографируемся.
Нет, просто
Вы можете сделать не фотографию, нет? С камерой. Сфотографировать. Профессионально, чтобы. Вот сейчас.
Дед, ты идешь на шаг.
Чувак, я с рюкзаком.
Вы немножко не влазите. Может быть, чуть выше вроде. О, так, Павло.
You guys, everyone should follow me on Twitter. I'll tweet you back. It's just my name at Twitter, Ronan Ferarow, R-O-N-A-N-F-A-R-R-O-W. And I'm being super loud because I'm really desperate for followers. But seriously, let's keep the conversation going.
Okay.
I told him he is. You're at the round. All right.